This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 3rd of July, 2019, and I am 2J.
I am Tuam.
And I am Miss K, your host. Again, in case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
How was Turkana?
Turkana was absolutely awesome. The people were wonderful, the weather was lovely, and we needed water. The Standard, Magoha in new exam dilemma. Daily Nation, State House not keen on RUTO's call for meeting. And The Star, prisons loses 1.8 billion shillings on food combat vests. I always have a struggle with this.
With The Star.
Read out the headline. Out loud.
Prisons loses 1.8 billion shillings on food combat. Yeah, I think the editor was asleep.
No, the editor was
that is
definitely
a grammatical error. It should either be prison loses 1.8 billion or prisons lose 1.8 billion. So
You can't have two S's.
Absolutely.
Okay, I say we start with this prisons loses.
yeah, we're back to regularly scheduled programming, aren't we?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Corruption, education, and a wee bit of politics.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, this is a repetitive story, if we're to go on the criteria.
Yes.
This had been mentioned before, where there was a tender for some vests for the police
Yes.
in the prisons
Yes.
that were actually not safe for them, and so they had to be sent back.
And
But the addition to this story is there was an audit
Yes.
whereby they found that there were either double tenders
Or double payments.
Double payments. There's just a lot of impropriety around it. So corruption
I say this.
as normal.
Let's take you through our three-part criteria, and we have a three-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves three questions. Is this headline topical or speculative? As you've said, it's not topical.
Yes.
Is it repetitive or groundbreaking?
Yeah.
It is repetitive.
Yeah.
And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? It's
beyond lazy.
Beyond
It's
lazy
beyond
up
lazy.
to and including the editing
I
of
think we
it.
just toss it
Toss
instantly
it.
without even discussing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Magoha in new exam dilemma. Interesting story. I like the story because for once I actually would like to applaud our members of parliament.
Yes.
They called the education committee in the National Assembly, called in Magoha to answer questions on the CBC and to tell them about its implementation, what they will do. And they identified 4 critical issues that I think 4 key questions that they required Magoha to answer.
Yes.
And then Magoha said that, you know what, your questions, they're valid, but I've put in place a task force, and this task force will answer these questions next year.
Putting in place a task force, it's such a cop-out. It's putting in place a task force to put in place another task force to put in place another one.
It's fantastic politics by Magoha. If I want to run away from something, you
put in a task force.
push it.
Push it.
Yeah, push it.
And by that time, we could possibly also have a new CS. So that's their problem, their
Not
monkeys.
mine.
Absolutely.
But I do agree with you, Ms. K. I feel like we've been putting the newspapers and the members of parliament to task about not really being thoroughgoing about this new curriculum.
Right.
And I think for the first time, they've put their foot down and they've asked some really interesting questions.
Yeah.
And I'd say this, as a parent in this Kenya of ours, whose child may just find themselves in CBC, this is an experiment that I don't think I want to get
Nobody's
into.
child wants to be a guinea pig.
I say, what do we think about
we
this?
have to start from
I say
somewhere.
let's put it on the parking bay because I like the story and I'm not...
Let them be guinea pigs. We have to start from somewhere.
No, please, not our children. Daily Nation, State House not keen on RUTO's call for a meeting.
I have so much to say on this. But first, I don't think DP said this.
Okay. So speculative.
It is speculative. But then again, if DP wanted a PG, parliamentary group meeting with UHURU, I think it's valid. Because, Jubilee is not personal property.
Very true.
It belongs to the people. The president and the deputy president were elected on a single ticket, and that ticket was a Jubilee ticket, right? Now, when they are told to first focus on development and not politics, I wonder, is development, is politics a prerequisite for development? All right? Can you not do development without doing politics? And in my view, it's a yes, right? And everywhere you go, every democracy that you see, you have to sustain some level of politics. I actually think the reason Uhuru Kenyatta is facing the kind of fights he's facing within the executive and parliament is because he keeps saying, let's not do politics.
okay, somebody brought up the point that if you're trying to talk to your dad,
Yeah.
you know, to get a little bit of money from him,
Yeah.
and your dad keeps avoiding you,
Yes.
it's not that, it might not be that he doesn't have the money,
Yeah.
maybe he just doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And
So
at
maybe
that point, you just have to put your hands up and say, Dad doesn't want to talk to me, and just get over it.
No, he's a
So I think that maybe RUTO just needs to
Move on.
No, but you see, this is a marriage. It is not, now this is...
It's not father and son.
It is not father and son. This is husband and wife.
But similarly, in a marriage, if your husband doesn't want to talk to you, then maybe you're
He
like...
just then want
he
to
doesn't
talk
want
to
to talk to
you.
you.
Yeah, then
Maybe you need to find new options. Maybe a divorce,
So,
you know,
so
needs to be...
Or maybe change tact.
Change tact, yeah.
change tact.
Change tact.
Change tact means he'll go and find another husband.
No, change tact means you look for more different ways of asking for
approaching,
it,
yeah.
of approaching
So what are we
the
saying
issue.
between the two headlines, though?
I would toss this because it's speculative,
I would agree.
Yeah.
and I'd say we keep that because one,
But-
Magoha is the bull in the china shop, and
Yes.
finally he's
Yes.
been revealed for what he is.
I
Yes.
would agree.
Can we say it's a winning headline?
Yes, a winning headline. Very good.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to have to go somewhere. And that somewhere is, have you guys, did you read the news today?
Yes.
We've just read it.
Mr. Egg is inside.
Or did you mean Dennis Itumbi?
Yes.
This joke is only for Gaba people.
I think it's a press guy for William RUTO, Dennis Itumbi, who's domiciled within the presidency. He's been arrested, and I think the reason he's arrested is because he is suspected of writing that letter of, the letter of
The
assassination letter,
yes, yeah.
and then forging it. And I think he caused some alarm, saying that someone is planning to assassinate the deputy president. I think, in my view, these guys should have just let this matter just
die
Die.
quietly.
Yeah, no, that's
Just
very
die,
true.
just
Yeah,
die.
we said it the whole of last week.
Yeah,
we did.
because I mean, you're not arresting Itumbi, really. The
Yeah.
shot you're taking is at the deputy president.
I mean, clearly we know what tomorrow's headlines are going to be.
Yeah.
Let's
about.
wait for it and then we can discuss
Then we'll
about
discuss it
your
then.
Mr. Egg
Yeah.
tomorrow. On to our next segment, the political pieces. The political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Just like the headlines, we have a three-part criteria that we use to break them down for you. We ask ourselves, is the cartoon humorous or is it dry?
Yeah.
Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And
Yeah.
finally, is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yeah,
Yes. The
Hi.
standard. Gado.
standard.
The mental picture you've given me.
Oh, God, today is so boring.
Comic strip.
Comic strip, let me describe it. Bob is a caricature of a variety of Kenyans. First guy is saying Bob Collymore was a leader with vision. Second is a lady saying a leader with humility. That guy was innovative. Fourth person, lady saying inspiring and transformational. Fifth person says resilient.
Resilient.
And then Wanjiko is there pondering.
She's crossing out
So why
like
do
this.
we elect crooks, thugs, and bozos into office every 5 years?
And it's credited at a guy.
Yeah. First, I have two reasons. The reason why, number one, is because the people we elect are our own reflection.
Yeah.
Second, politicians are thugs and crooks.
Okay, you know what? I think
This
we
is
made
discussing
point.
the obvious. Toss
I think we
it.
toss it. Ozone of the
Ozone.
Star.
Your favorite.
Yes, your favorite. Caricature of...
You know what, guys? Yes, he's my favorite now. I've changed tact, okay? I
Yeah.
love him. All right?
Hey,
Stop.
don't catch a feeling.
Okay, let's describe it. Caricature of Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, Salva Kiir, and William RUTO. And the caption there is, "Oh Lord, I didn't know of your... Oh Lord, I didn't know of your presence here. Poverty growing up made me this way."
But the way that he's written it
He's
is that,
truncated it.
your eyes are to focus on the words in red,
Yes.
which say Lord of Poverty. Yeah.
It's brilliant, brilliant. You know, and he's the one who's addressing
Guys,
it.
these days, up is down, down
Down
is
is
up,
down.
right is left.
This is brilliant. And
But you have to agree, it is a really interesting cartoon, and it works both ways. You can read it that way, or you
Yeah.
can just see
Yeah,
the Lord
no,
of Poverty.
I'm
Yeah.
struggling because it is very good.
But context of this is Salva Kiir, they had their dinner at State
Yeah.
House, and DP looked so disinterested, and he looked like he should not have been there.
Okay. All right.
What?
I say we
let's-
put it in the parking bay
I
because
agree.
it's a really good cartoon, and I don't know what's there in the Daily Nation today, seeing as Ndula is
Again,
on
another
duty.
Salva Kiir cartoon.
Whoa! All right, Salva Kiir and Uhuru Kenyatta shaking hands.
Another play of words.
Another
Again.
play of words. Another state estate visit by a president who lives in our leafy suburbs.
I don't know whether you should call it a state visit if you're coming also, if you live here.
Down the road,
If you live down the road, is it really a state visit?
I don't think so.
He was with us in Safari Park the other day for a prayer breakfast.
But it is interesting that both that both Ndula and Ozone did a play on words on the exact same topic.
I still ask the question, is Ozone Ndula?
Or is Ndula Ozone? Or are they both? Yeah. Okay. I have a feeling.
I don't like this one so much. This play of words, since we're looking at like terms, is much better. Can we? Should we?
I would agree, reluctantly, but I agree.
Lot of poverty.
Yes,
we have a winning. Oh, sorry. Oh, please do
and today's winning cartoon comes from Ozone of the Star. Move on.
And what is our final thought?
It's a long one.
It's a long one.
It's a long one.
Go for it.
And now our final thought. Inspired by a book entitled God's Bits of Wood by Sembene Osman. And if you realize, this week we've been talking about Anglophone countries, Kenya and Nigeria, that had a colonial experience from the Brits. And the Brits had a plan. The objective in Anglophone colonial Africa was short-term. Take stuff, extract stuff, within 100 years, you're out. However, in the book, in the place where you're going to look at right now, Senegal and Mali, Francophone Africa, the French had this idea of assimilation, right? The idea was long-term colonization. And assimilation was behaving like the French, talking like the French, eating like the French, all right? And it went so much so that 80% of Franco-African countries today pay from their cash reserves, pay some money to the French Central Bank. And so as well, the former Senegal president, his name was Seda Senghor, all right? He became a member of parliament in the French parliament. And the guy was so French, he used to even correct people who did not speak French.
No, he used to correct native French speakers.
French people, you know? And I mean, you see the ideas, Francophone Africa, you know, and Anglophone Africa. The way stuff happened is
there were different experiences.
Different experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's what this book highlights a lot of, and I think it's a very different experience for us as East Africans to immerse ourselves and understand this. So yes, as you said, it's called God's Bits of Wood. So the novel was written in 1960 in French, and the French title is Le Bout de Bois de Dieu. Le bout de bois de Dieu.
I wouldn't even try. You do it.
Le bout de bois
de Dieu. Yes.
Le bout de bois de Dieu.
Hey, what if you're a Frenchman now? And it is again part of our African Writers series, but it was translated into English in 1962. So the book is set in colonial Senegal against the backdrop of the 1947-48 railway strike. So at the time, the French controlled all the railways, and in fact, they controlled all the infrastructure, and they would operate it for their own use to the detriment of the local people. So dissatisfied with this way of life, the people go on strike, and this takes place in 3 towns that the book takes us through. So the French administrators decide that they're very dissatisfied with the way the Africans are behaving, and they decide to punish them. So they deny them water, they deny them access to credit in order to buy food, and they thought that this would bring the Africans down and, you know, whip them into shape, but it had the opposite effect. And it backfired on them. So instead, the women who were in society were very domicile and silent were now forced to provide for their households. And the effect that this ended up having is that they started to speak in the men's assemblies alongside their husbands and their sons. And in the book, there's a quote that says, "The men understood that these times created not only new men, but also new women." So you have in this book where there's this turn in the gender equality, which is very interesting. But in the book, Sembene examines the way society operated in Senegal at the time. And the story goes back and forth between the people in the village and the people in the city or the urban areas. And each chapter is told through the perspective of a different person. So you have it told through an older person, a young person, a rich person, a poor person, an educated one, an uneducated one, a person who's passionately Francophone, who wants to assimilate, and a person who really dislikes the French. And I think that the question it begged for me in this book is, how could, in the now he's writing this book in the 60s when Senegal has just received independence. How is society supposed to create equality for all of these different people when they all want different things? And I think that was very interesting in Francophone Africa when they do have assimilation, but you also do want to retain your African roots.
And I think, I like this book for a very small reason. It's an actual depiction of an event that actually happened. There was a strike in 1947, 1948 of the workers of the railway, and it was the Senegal-Dakar Niger Railway. And by Niger I don't mean the country, I mean the river. And this was a very iconic construction of the colonial era and of French colonial Africa in that era, in that place of the world. What was important about it, and I want you guys to know this interesting fact, fun fact, that Osman Sembene was actually part of that strike. He actually did participate in it. So you could kind of call this a thinly veiled memoir of sorts, because he experienced it and then he wrote about it in the style that he would use when he became a film director. So it's very brilliant, very bright, very narrativic. But because he had that in him, he didn't use one perspective. So he brings us all these different perspectives and all these different people that you identify in the community, and then gives you this strike from all those perspectives so that you can see a global picture. And the interesting thing is that even though he wrote this in 1960, when they had gotten independence, this particular strike, that 1947 strike, was a turning point in the colonial struggle, because he was able to show that ability of different personalities, different people to unify, become solid and united against a singular cause. And despite what you're calling very extreme measures, we take away your wages, we take away your water supply, we pressure the traders of the towns on the railway not to give you food, you still come together and you fight together. And I want to also compare it to something that we did on Monday. Ngugi wa Thiong'o's book, The River Between. And there's something different between that little village that we talked about that was separated by two ridges and a river between. This particular place, they were connected by the railway. So that railway was a symbol of the growth and development of capitalism, the destructive nature of colonialism. It showed them the disparity in their experience between they themselves as Africans and the French colonial masters who had better pay, they had better conditions for themselves. It showed them the exploitation of themselves as workers, but it also showed the potential for a new life. Why, and I will quote something that they say in the book, it was like two shining rails tracing a path into the future for them.
And I think what was really interesting is that one of the central characters in the book is, I'm going to butcher this,
I know those names
Bakayoko, yes. So the story is told slightly through his eyes, even though he does show up almost halfway into the book. And he's a charismatic union leader. But I think what was so interesting is that the most central figure in the book is actually the community. So there's no true hero apart from them. And another interesting fact, today is full of fun facts. The book takes its title from a Senegalese and Malian superstition. That according to tradition, you do not count people for fear that the gods would come and inhabit their bodies. So you instead of counting them and saying we are 5 in the house, you count the bout de bois, which is the bits of wood, because the gods would consider that to be useless. So I find that very interesting on two levels. On the first one, is Sembene trying to dismantle that superstition and saying that the people in the community should stand up and want to be counted, because every person in the community is valuable. They're all, that collective is so important. But then the second thing is, did they, in standing up, were they bringing attention to themselves, to the gods who were the French leaders? And I thought that was a very interesting use of that superstition.
Very interesting. I draw parallels to Ngugi wa Thiong'o and what's the name? Chinua Achebe. You see, when Bakayoko was telling his mother that he's going to do a strike against the French, and also the head of the trade union, they said, oh, don't do it. Do you remember the way they killed us last time? Now, going back to colonized Nigeria and colonized Africa, the first reaction was fight, right? And I find it a little bit awkward that the French realized, or they said, no, hold back a bit, there are better ways to do this. But then I also went back to see, I think these guys they had a degree of freedom much earlier on. Assimilation actually put a little bit of freedom into the French, into Francophone countries and Anglophone countries. And I realized that these guys actually joined trade unions. Africans were allowed to join trade unions.
This is, in 1920s.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yes.
Right. So the colonial experience of Francophone Africa and
Anglophone
Africa
is completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah. So the third and final interesting fact I'm going to give for the day.
Yes.
It's
Interesting fact, information overload.
It's information that we had missed in the previous stories, the final thoughts that we had mentioned.
Yeah.
So Prof really wants us to mention this. Chinua Achebe went to the University of London in 1953.
Yes.
So when you read his book, Things Fall Apart, you should notice that this is good
an
education.
Educated man, very well educated.
Yeah.
However, in contrast, Sembene only achieved standard 3 education.
Yeah.
So he's another one of our very well-known dropouts.
Yes.
And I think that we should...
And very successful.
Yeah. And as we've been saying, as we said last week with the college dropouts, we praise you on either side, whether you graduated or whether you didn't.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Doesn't matter whether you went to Makerere University, doesn't matter whether you went to the University of London, 3 years in formal training, or your Bob Colimo and you got to high school.
Yes.
All your experiences are valid and you can still make an impact in the community.
Yes.
Today, our winning headline comes from The Standard. Can't even believe it. And our winning cartoon from Ozone of the Star. 2J can't even believe it.
2M.
Yes.
2M also can't believe it. The world is topsy-turvy, but I do want to say this and go back to a point that 2J just made and talked about coming together and the transformative power of mass action. That ability, what did you call them? The Buddha? The Buddha bois. Those little pieces that are useless. And I think that it's two things. One, I feel like Sembene was trying to help us, or trying to make the Senegalese realize that they were not useless pieces. That all of them, when they came together, were actually quite a powerful group that could band together and change the circumstances of their life. And I want to end with a quote from a book that we have read here in the past. I would ask you to read it. It actually is a really nice book by Paulo Freire, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And he says that social transformation occurs when people perceive their state not as fated or unalterable, but merely as limiting. And that you can only pursue full humanity, not in isolation or through individualism, but in fellowship and solidarity. So all of us little pieces of wood can come together and make something meaningful and fight our colonial masters, whoever they may be. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.